But first, we're going to our friend Miles Kristen from somewhere in the neighborhood of Madison, Wisconsin. Miles is a regular contributor to the Marc Patrone radio program as far as it applies to U.S. politics and specifically what's going on in his state, which is a lot. Miles, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, talk about what's going on in Wisconsin. I guess what the communists, the revolution is on over there, is it?
Well, they've taken over the schools, and I mean specifically the high schools, and they've radicalized the kids where they're going to the school board meetings and swearing at the school board members. And I feel a lot of these same kids are the ones who probably ended up doing some of the looting and the rioting and the tearing down of the statues. And now, the protesters are showing up at school board members' houses and demanding things like that they remove all the police from the schools and so forth. And what's really crazy about this is that these organizations are being funded by tax dollars. This started actually under Republican Governor Scott Walker. It's continued under our Democratic governor. And these nonprofit organizations that are receiving all this tax money are working directly with the Socialist Party of America, or the Party for Liberation and Socialism.
I can't believe a Republican governor, Scott Walker, would have allowed something like this. I mean, it must have been something that was forced on him. It's just bizarre that these communists, for lack of a better word, are getting tax dollars to agitate and do political activism against the Republic.
There was some charitable things they do for the community, but they're using it as a platform for a political agenda. And I mean, it seems like it's unethical or possibly illegal for a nonprofit organization to be doing such direct political campaigning. I mean, they're intricately involved in the school board every time there's a school board meeting. And then yet they are working directly with this Party for Liberation and Socialism, which that organization is advocating for the release of all these criminals from the Dane County Jail. Doesn't matter, what they did, just as long as they're a particular type of individual. And it's absolutely insane. Madison is just metaphorically going up in flames, and sometimes literally. And I saw a lot of this coming for years. I could see how, they were mobilizing the youth for an agenda that the youth didn't even understand. People are out in the streets for very legitimate reasons about police reform, but then they're being used by people who have a political agenda that goes far beyond police reform or anything like that.
I'm hearing that Wisconsin is one of those states could lean Democrat in the upcoming election in November. It went with Trump in 2016. What are you hearing now? Is it a mixed bag between the radical leftists who seem to have the ear of the media and are all over people's television sets and radios and on the web, and maybe some of the other people in Wisconsin who are thinking there's no way that we're going to allow Joe Biden to be the next president of the United States?
Well, I mean, there's definitely a lot of rallying and left-leaning stuff that goes on in Madison and Milwaukee, but they don't really leave those two cities and hit the rural area. That's why, while we have a Democratic governor, we still have, 66 out of 99 state assembly are Republican. I mean, everything outside of Madison and Milwaukee is pretty red. And yet, like I've been mentioning to some of these Republicans now for years, it's like, hey, there's these organizations and they're using taxpayer money, not just this one I was specifically talking about with the schools and so forth, but there's like other political organizations that are basically getting cities to drop hundreds of thousands of dollars essentially on their rallies because they'll pay $2,000 for a permit, but then the city spends tens of thousands of dollars on marshals and policing and using the school's facilities to have these political events and rallies and so forth. Like there'll be an environmental rally or an anti-gun rally, but then all the Democrats come and speak, and taxpayer money is being used left and right, and Republican politicians have been completely ignoring this, that there's just a huge misuse of tax dollars going on right now.
Yeah, just to be informing our listeners, you're not a Republican or a Democrat. You're normally in the libertarian vein, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, I've got criticisms of both parties, and I would at the same time I'm willing to work with people of different political parties on specific issues that we can come together on.
Everybody's talking about this couple in St. Louis. One of them was armed with an AR-15. The McCluskeys, Mark and Patricia, had enough. As the mob gathered, they had torn down an iron gate that was, I guess it was kind of a gated community that they were in, very ritzy neighborhood in St. Louis. These people are obviously quite wealthy, lawyers. Anyway, they were forced to take up arms in order to protect their homes. What's the buzz around your neck of the woods in Wisconsin and in and around Madison in terms of what these people did and what it says about the United States in 2020?
I don't know all the specifics of that case, and I bet if you go to one news outlet, they're going to show you one version of the story. You go to another news outlet, they're going to show you another version of the story. Specifically in Madison, all the rallying and whatnot happens downtown, it seems like, and with the exception of when they show up to protest the school board members at their house, it seems like the biggest thing that's being affected are the local businesses. I was incorrect last week. I was talking about how there was a guy with a megaphone who had gotten arrested. Well, it turns out the guy was actually walking into local businesses with a baseball bat and a megaphone demanding free food and money, and they were extorting local businesses like some sort of 1920s mob scenario. And people can commit crimes in the city of Madison now, and you'll have these protest organizations demanding their release, even if they've committed, violent acts. Literally, there's a guy in the Dane County Jail for double homicide, and they're talking about helping him raise bail fund, and because there's these activists, they want to help people specifically based on the color of their skin and not what they actually did. Let's keep violent people in jail who actually committed violent crimes. That's, nonviolent people, fine. We don't need nonviolent people in jail necessarily, but they're actually advocating for violent criminals to be released right now.
Yeah, that's bizarre. And are these people being released? We're talking about, people who've committed rape and murder or attempted murder or assaults or armed robbery, these types of people. There's a push to have these people just let out?
Yeah, this started actually with when the COVID stuff first started. There was this Party for Liberation and Socialism was advocating for hundreds of people to be released from the Dane County Jail, regardless of what their crimes were. And so, I understand with the COVID situation, there's a fair debate about, should we have somebody in jail for, say, simple drug possession or something like that, but to just say, we're going to release everybody, including violent criminals, it's insane.
Miles, this is just very, very troubling. You really have to wonder just how violent things are going to get once the election really kicks into high gear. Right now, people are always talking about this double-digit lead for Biden. I don't believe it, but, who knows? Maybe I'm misreading the situation south of the border, or maybe the pollsters are off base. Remember what they said about Hillary? Hillary. Hillary was supposed to be... She was going to clean house. She was going to get over 300 electoral college votes without even breaking a sweat. And as we all know, it certainly didn't work out that way. But it just seems like the left really has pulled out all the stops. And the way I see it is, if you wanted to target the middle class, if you really wanted to destroy Trump's America, you would defund the police, you would take away guns from law-abiding Americans, and you would take a knee before the mob and say, hey, you want to rip the place up, you want to burn, you want to loot, you want to destroy businesses, you want to go after homes, go for it. After all, you've been hard done by. You have a legitimate racial grievance here. Loot and pillage to your heart's content. You would do all the things that are taking place in the United States right now.
As far as the defunding the police thing, it's if you defund the police, what do you think is going to happen? Chances are they're going to commit more civil asset forfeiture, meaning the police would probably then, take more things. They'd probably give out more tickets. You can't sum up the entirety of a serious discussion like police reform down to 3 syllables like they try to do all the time. And, stop the militarization of the police. That's something I think most people would agree with. Redirecting the money inside the police departments. I mean, if anything, these police, what they need is more time off. They need better pay. They need to take away they have some sort of, requirements where it's like, well, you got to make the quotas, basically. And they don't officially have quotas in many situations anymore, but they unofficially have these quotas that they have to give out so many tickets, and they have to do this. And it's like, if we can figure out ways where police are more relaxed, where they don't feel such hostility and really anxiety, and there is a certain level of fear that police feel, and that's what causes them in a lot of situations to act the way they do. And so it's like, how do you create better relationships between the police and the community? And somewhere in there between the libertarian beliefs and even the far left protesters about the idea of more community policing and more community control, I mean, that comes down to the bringing government down to a more local level. And there are actual concrete solutions that we can come up with that people on many different spectrums can understand and agree with. The problem is they're not going to be summed up into a hashtag or a 3-syllable chant, and that's what people are trying to do all the time.
Miles Christen, thank you so much. I know you have to run.
Thanks for having me.
Much appreciated, as always. Miles Christen, check out Wisconsin International Radio.